What's going on there, Twitch and YouTube world? It's been a while, hasn't it? Well, truth be told, I think I laid most of my feelings out there when it came to Off the Grid in my most recent video, which was almost a month ago. And to be honest with you folks, I hadn't touched the game since. Um, I had a talk with some other players in the community, and I think many of us were kind of in a really weird phase. It's like a love-hate relationship when it comes to Off the Grid. But one of the things that I always have been really making an effort to do was stay committed to the content and bring you some just updates and changes and help out the community any way that I possibly can. And there's definitely been a lot of change while I was away. Now, the first thing that I want to say, in my last video, I was kind of hinting to a lot of you, like, the end is near. And one thing I want to stress to all of you is that I love this game. I love Off the Grid. And I only want to see the game succeed. But being part of the very, very early batch of players, people who are pioneers and people who are original zeros, I think a lot of us have mixed emotions because we have experienced the game in different states. And I think at, weapon balance or just quality of life features, there were certain time periods superior to, some of the things that we see existing in the game now. I'm not going to dive into a lot of negative things, to be completely honest with you. This video is really to kind of give you all a scoop on what exactly has changed, and I'll also kind of share with you some of my thoughts on the game in its current state right now. So instead of going through the patch notes, which is something I usually do in the video, I want to keep things a little bit shorter this time and just make sure you all are approaching the game from the right mindset in terms of, what works, why is it working, and maybe some of the meta that is, kind of popular in the game. So first things first, we need to talk about maybe some common loadouts that are working for me. I'll share those builds with you, and then I'll kind of go over the what and why behind, each of the specific loadouts. So loadout number one that I'm going to share with you folks is going to be the M4 Commodore Enforcer. A lot of people are also probably going to want to opt for the M4 Commodore controller, which is a pre-built gun, but it aims fast, it reloads faster, and the only trade-off to it is that it kind of makes you move a little bit slower, but it is an incredibly accurate weapon. Nonetheless, I am still going to recommend that you use the M4 Commodore Enforcer build that I'm going to show you, or the M4 Apex Predator. All three of these M4 options are going to be fantastic, and you only need to worry about building one of these. Now, we're going to take a look at why the attachments are so important a little bit later, but I'm going to save that here for a second and just share with you the build that I am currently using. And I'd say the only thing I would probably swap out or change is maybe getting rid of the laser pointer and adding the silencer. But this is the build: M4 Commodore Light Stock, M4 Commodore Drum Mag, M4 Commodore Laser Pointer, and the control grip for the M4. You are still going to see a lot of people running things like angled or probably the stabilizing foregrip with the silencer. Pretty much any of the original builds that I was giving you in my prior videos are still good, but they're not optimal. And again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more after we kind of go through what's working and why. The Kestrel is back, baby, and if there is anything positive or for me to be grateful for, it's that, man, making sniping great again was heard by the OTG dev team. When it comes to this build, I actually only run 3 attachments currently. And again, this is going to kind of tie into some of the changes surrounding attachments. The OTG Dev team has really been mixing it up and in my opinion, making positive changes to the attachments. I think there's a lot more customized options or customability than the game's ever had before. And it's really, really going to be important that you guys understand what works for you and your play style. It's no longer cookie cutter. This is the best build like it was maybe a month ago or 2 months ago. Now the game is a lot more tailored to the player itself. But when it comes to the Kestrel, I am using the Kestrel 3X Advanced Scope, the noise suppressor for the Kestrel, and the angled foregrip for the Kestrel. One thing I do want to note to people, I don't know if it's just me, but when I ADS in this game, it seems to just multiply the speed or the base speed of my regular aiming. So if any of you are also experiencing this issue, right now what I've done is I've gone into my settings, I have turned on per zoom sensitivity, and I have actually halved everything down to 0.5, and it feels good and controllable like it was prior to 2 patches ago. But ever since that most recent patch, for some reason, you pick up something that has a 2x or higher, and it's like you're teleporting around your screen, and I don't know how anybody can snipe like that. So try reducing the speed. You're probably going to get some better results. And the other thing that I'm going to talk to you about is some of the differences when it comes to really just the attachments affecting the way the game is played. So next we're going to go into the Terracon, and as you all can see, man, Kestrel's back, baby. So for a lot of the PC guys, you're going to see that kind of being used. But looking at the Terracon Maniac, this is the build that is working for me. So I do have the Terracon Drum Mag, the Terracon Laser Pointer, the Stabilizing Foregrip for the Terracon, and the Silencer for the Terracon. So I'm going to get into the deets. I'm going to keep saying it. You're like, bro, shut up. We get it. Show us. But hang tight. Now, in both of my assault rifle builds right now, I think mobility is king. So my recommendations for you are going to either be using hook shot or slam fist. You got to get something that can get you vertical or get you out of those sticky situations and help get around the map as much as possible. I think legs are actually in a much more balanced state than they were before. I still got some gripes about the movement that, has drastically slowed the gameplay down. But Roadrunners are fantastic and Leapers are fantastic. And to be completely honest with you, Hammerheads are equally fantastic. So those are your top 3 options. And if I were to order them, I'd still say Roadrunner's kind of at the top. If you're going to be in the air a lot more, Leapers second, and then Hammerhead's kind of like best of both worlds. Really great for just being aggressive in your face and catching your opponent off guard. Take them for a spin. You might win. Thumpers, meh. Cyberlancers, meh. I don't even like if any of you've used the Cyberlancers, they have some moments in the game where they could come in handy or help set up a play, but I just don't think they're really offering high enough of a value to say this is a top tier leg limb. Kind of like Thumpers, right? You might be getting kills, you might be dropping bombs on people, you might be stacking them as a team to kind of get some more value out of it, but not a top tier leg limb. So that should kind of wrap up the limb meta for your first 2 limbs. For the final limb, honestly, I think Recon is in a pretty decent spot. Bounce Bomber is in a pretty decent spot. I think Bounce Bomber right now still is a great kind of like a CC or, a way to slow your opponents down and take advantage of them. Maybe they're turning a corner and you're about to lose them on the chase. This is a way to kind of keep things on, keep the ball in your court, if you will. Javelina's a fantastic opener. It's great to use these, lock onto your target, and set up really big plays. So another really great limb. And believe it or not, Kinetic Shield is still one of the most slept on limbs in the game. It is powerful and should probably at least be in one of your kits for those in-game circles where you're looking to upset the play. The Maxi Gun did get a major buff a patch and a half ago, and it is quick, it's responsive, and I honestly think it's probably one of the most slept on limbs in the game because it had such a rough start. And I do not recommend using this particular limb if you are by yourself. You want to be able to take advantage of the distractions your teammates are creating, or fights that are really busy and chaotic. You know, your goal is to want a third party with this and clean up everything on the scene. Is it an S tier limb? Not quite. I would literally take the kinetic shield over it. So I'd say it's kind of like a B tier. The kinetic shield is an A tier. A plus on the Javelina, A plus on the bounce bomber. S tier is absolutely going to be hook shot and slam fist. Those are like the best limbs. Phosphor Fury is also S tier. So if you want to have something more offensive, these are the limbs I'm going to recommend for you. Paralyzer, I don't really recommend it unless you're solely using it to get yourself off of recon scans. But remember, this is only going to help you as an individual player. And to be fair, the visuals that it leaves behind are really messy, especially when you start to stack in other stuff like the new Cyberlancer legs, and weapon noise and smoke and just, you know, all the gas and everything. It can get really messy. So personally, paralyzers C tier, not really on my choice. Rippers C minus tier, not really one of my top choices. Now, one of the things I begged for, I was like, please come on OTG, just like diversify the game with some changes. And they did come out with a huge patch, actually 2 patches now, that have improved the efficiency of Skunk Paw and Slugger. I actually think these are kind of C plus. They're almost maybe even B tier. The Skunk Paw is doing a lot better damage. It's in a much larger radius and area to help you kind of control the fight. You can kind of see it in this image how large of a plume is being created from using this limb, which is much more better, much more efficient. It's great at trying to kind of scatter the visuals of your opponent. And me personally, I like to kind of use it like if I'm calling in a loadout and it's already, you know, you can see the green smoke from the loadout, I kind of throw this 10, 20 feet in front of it. So that way, maybe one side of, you know, my loadout's position, people can't see exactly where I'm picking it up, right? They got to get into the fight and come challenge me for my box. We all know how frustrating it is to have somebody just drop in and snatch up your goods. It's not a fun experience. So honestly, a C plus, maybe B tier on the Skunk Paw. Slugger also got an increased radius and it is a lot slower. I think it brings you down to 25% movement speed. It's not one of those things you could just zip zap, pop a limb and get out of anymore. So really great job by the OTG dev team fixing this and improving this limb. It is pretty viable. With that being said, to close things out, we do have the Trip Mine, and I think the Trip Mine is just always going to be, it's a B tier limb. Like it's not S tier anymore. You can't stick it to people, but you can still use it to be a nuisance in chase situations. Plant C4s on top of the ropes, and weird angles, and honestly, maybe even to protect yourself. Kind of use it as a way of crowd control. You know, if people are trying to fly around you and take a different way, you can shut off some of that pathing, or put them in a situation where you're not getting in here unless you shoot the mine first. And that's where you can start to play off of the audio cues of your competition and make those adjustments that are needed for you to be successful. So that should kind of give you all a glimpse into the world of the limb meta right now and where it's at. Me personally, I think Recon Drone, which is the last one we left out, is A tier, maybe A plus tier, but it's so valuable to your team and setting up plays, knowing where your opponent is, that I run it on every single kit. And the only thing I'm really swapping out right now is I'm either going to run a hook shot or I am going to run slam fist, and in some situations double slam fist, or even slam fist hook shot as a combination. But that, again, that's just me. Now, we covered a couple of the other builds. Let's talk about the SMG. I think the SMG meta right now, you kind of got two really, really good options. And the first is still going to be the tried and true AZV-100, specifically the Doom Zero version, in my opinion. But you can use the regular AZV. Fantastic weapon. You're going to get some really great kill times with it. And one of the things that we're going to kind of talk about as well is kill time, right? TTK. But I'm going to save that for last because it's kind of a little bit more of an in-depth situation. Something else that's going to be super important for you is the kite. I think the nebula, now that you can add attachments to it, is going to be a fantastic start for a lot of you looking for something that's just kind of out the gate, ready to go, and really well equipped. So now that you can slap some extra stuff on here, we're going to talk about the attachments in just a moment, but remember, tailor it to your play style. If you got some more guns than that, I do recommend anything from the Kite family. The Liberator is fantastic. The regular Kite build, what that I'm using right now, is the following. It just makes me really quick and agile. And to wrap the Kite build up for you, it is the Kite 1.4x red dot compact sight, the Kite heavy barrel, the Kite drum mag, and the Kite compact laser pointer. The beautiful thing about this weapon is that it's already got really manageable recoil, and it's just good to continue to abuse the higher fire rate weapons in the game. It's a lot easier to get in, get those rounds on your target, and get out. And a lot of people right now are also running hip fire variants, which is why I showed you the Nebula earlier, because that one is actually suited for hip fire usage. And you can look at, your attachments and decide, hey, does this give me hip fire reduction in some way? And then add that to the weapon to make it even better than it was before. So take it for a spin and see if you win. Those are my opinion right now, are hands down the two best SMGs in the game. There are some folks there that are using the Prankster Woodpecker. This is one I've been experimenting with and having a lot of fun with. And you might be wondering, why am I using these specific attachments? And it's going to come down to some of the things I'm going to tell you later in the tail end of the video. But Woodpecker heavy barrel, silencer for the Woodpecker, Woodpecker drum mag, and the Woodpecker heavy grip. Now, outside of this, if you somehow manage to get your hands on one, again, the Prankster variant of this weapon it's the best one, hands down. So if you can get your hands on it, right? That's the big question. Can you get your hands on it? That's what I'm going to recommend for you. So like if we go to the marketplace and we take a look at weapons, we'll go to SMGs and we'll swing on over to the Woodpecker, a Prankster right here. So this is going to be one of those pre-built weapons in the game. And remember that this boasts a faster fire rate and a longer range. And that is why it's so efficient in this current meta. And it does come with 30 rounds, right? The standard version of the other one comes with 25. So just, being used to a weapon like this is going to set you up for success. If you're good with a Woodpecker and you can get your hands on the actual, Woodpecker Prankster, you are going to smash. And prices have come down quite a bit for this weapon. It's only sitting at about 13,000 gun. And I know my gun hustlers out there know that that's not that much. There's once upon a time you were spending probably double the price that you're seeing now. Personally, I try and kind of save some of my gun now that we're on the main net and it's precious to me. So I am not going to waste my money on it. But you like the Woodpecker, that's how you get the best one. Now, taking a look, I am running a double variant of that. And as you can see, double slam fist. This is just like my troll loadout to have a little bit of fun in the game. And honestly, I'll be truthful with you. I think double M4 is probably the next best thing. So here's an old variant that you probably saw from my last video. And I actually am keeping this gun here so I can explain to you in the shooting range the changes the devs have done to the attachments. But before I do that, I'm just going to quickly switch gears. We'll take a look at the changes I think that are going to be really important for folks to kind of just, be versed on and understand. And it is really just it's going to be focusing on some of the TTK times. So as you can see, here are the TTKs of the guns currently, and this is updated. So you can see we got the Tacoma Pioneer, which I'd say 90% of players are not going to be able to get their fingertips on. And then we all know kind of, hit or miss shotguns are, right? Of course, they're going to be close range demons, but they're not optimal in a game where folks are hitting Roadrunner and flying in the air and you're in air battles, right? So we want to pay attention to everything in this mid range, okay? So we have the Kite right on top, the Kite Liberator, the Kite Skumppocalypse, that's a tongue twister, and the Woodpecker Prankster. Just like I told you, these are going to be the cream of the crop in the meta right now. Now, the Doom Zero is technically a little bit faster, or excuse me, slower than the Tacoma, but the accuracy difference is where it's really going to give you a higher value. So for my Tacoma lovers out there, if you are looking for a build, to be honest with you, just with the way the gun is, there isn't a lot of change. So you can go back with some of the original builds that I was recommending to folks before, and I think you need to tailor this to what's working for you. I would probably ditch the 1.4 and maybe just probably throw a muzzle on it, probably a noise suppressor there to get a little extra range out of the weapon. But Tacoma heavy barrel I think is a must. The Tacoma drum mag I think is a must, and I think the compact laser is definitely a must. And it really comes down to the horizontal recoil. Now, everything else is completely optional, and I like to either go with the noise suppressor for the Tacoma or the 1.4x on the weapon itself. So take it for a spin, see if you win. But again, my recommendations are going to be AZV and any variation of the Kite in the game, and folks who can afford the Woodpecker, Prankster Woodpecker. Those are probably, in my opinion, the most reliable weapons in the game right now. Now, if we take a look at the long range, the Casper is a menace, but you need to have a really good shot. And I think most folks aren't really going to be comfortable on using that weapon specifically. So if you're looking for some close, second or thirds, I think the Hawk Cleanup Crew is definitely going to be a big one. And then as I told you in the intro of the video, right, the M4 Apex Predator and the M4 Commodore Enforcer are still going to be the kings. The Terracom Maniac is 0.4 seconds, right? I know you guys probably are seeing the Mavinga pop in here, and you might be asking yourself, well, what about the Mavinga? If you think you're going to have more success with it, take your Mavinga for a spin. I personally just don't have any builds for it, and I don't know a lot of players in the community that are really interested in running the Mavinga. The fire rate's just a little bit too slow. So it might have a faster TTK, but it's not nearly as reliable or has that consistency that we get out of the M4. Partisan maybe would be the last gun, I'd say, in the assault rifle category outside of the Hawk Cleanup Crew that are worth taking out for a spin and seeing if it treats you well. So that's pretty much going to wrap up current meta recommendations in the game. But the thing I want to kind of close out with is, a quick demonstration of why you need to tailor the guns to your needs instead of just following my videos as is every single time. Like you could have in the past, you could have gotten away with that, but things have changed. So we're going to switch gears back into the game. Let's go ahead and jump into the tryout zone so I can kind of give you a demonstration on the attachments themselves. So we're going to go to the double M4 loadout that I'm using as an example here. And I want everyone to pay attention to the recoil pattern when I shoot at the wall. Check this out. If you notice, the devs have implemented specific stats to affect the way the weapons behave a lot more. So in this example, I don't really have anything that is assisting the M4 with horizontal recoil. And by default, right, if we look at it one more time, the horizontal recoil wants to push my barrel to the right. And that's going to make it a lot harder for you to control. When you're trying to aim at something, you'll notice even when I'm just shooting at dummies, there's still a slight pull towards the right. Now, if we change some of the attachments, right, and this is where we now go to my regular M4, I'm not even going to do anything except ADS and shoot, and I want you to see if you can catch the difference. Suddenly, things aren't pulling to the right like they used to. So if a lot of you are out there feeling like the game's kind of awkward, or you're feeling like there's a strange kind of like pull fighting against you in your recoil, it means you need to make some adjustments to the weapons. And I think that's something that a lot of people do not understand. We're so used to, you know, going on YouTube or watching some of our favorite players taking the builds away with us without a clear understanding of the pros and cons that are behind it. So I'm going to leave the practice area here really quickly. And we are just going to take a look one more time at the M4 loadout, right? So this is the one that corrected that right pull happening in the recoil pattern. And the reason why is I am using, for example, the stock. And if we take a look at the stock, do you see that horizontal recoil reduction? That is 30%. Now, me being a mouse and keyboard user and a long-time shooter, I am very comfortable with pulling down on my mouse. It's not a problem for me to control vertical recoil. So I'm willing to take a penalty in that area. For folks who feel like their vertical recoil is too much to handle, you got to make a decision. Can I control things from the side to side, or can I control things vertically? And I could be completely wrong on this, but I think for most players on controller, you are going to have a much easier time handling horizontal recoil than maybe vertical recoil. And I think for mouse and keyboard players, you're very used to handling vertical recoil. So what's probably going to help make these guns feel a lot more comfortable for you is managing the horizontal recoil. Now, you might be asking yourselves, what are your thoughts on this, Holo? And I actually think this is fantastic. We're now starting to see a lot more depth coming out in these last few patches from the dev team at genuinely getting rid of a meta. Even though the M4 is still kind of king right now and the Kite is king right now, there's a lot of other options in there, and you can't just build them cookie cutter. You gotta tailor them to your play style. So other than the M4 light stock, right, the reason why we go with something like the laser pointer, as you can see, I'm getting more horizontal recoil control, and I pull my weapon out faster with the ADS time. This suits my play style, right? The faster ADS time also is going to tie into the light stock, faster reload time. So this gun is about me being the first one to the draw and finishing my target and just creating that more smooth, consistent gameplay and aim for me, right? That's what works for me. And the control grip, another example of me managing that horizontal recoil. Comes with a little bit of an ADS time penalty, but it's not significant. And if you take the math from the other attachment, right, I'm coming out on the positive side in terms of ADS time. So that is the what and why behind why I would probably use this M4, for example, which, by the way, I think this is going to work fantastic on controllers. So don't think just because I said I'm an M&K player and I probably manage recoil differently that this won't work for you, because you saw the difference, right? We could decide to shoot straight, or you can decide to fight your recoil and shoot towards the right. And I have noticed that pretty much all of the weapons in the game right now have a rightward recoil pull. I'd like to see the devs kind of get a little more creative and make some weird left pull, and maybe break away from the standard S shape recoil. That seems to always be the go-to for a lot of just cookie cutter shooters out in the industry right now. So would really like to see that change. And that is kind of the what's and whys behind a lot of these attachments that you're seeing on my weapons. Again, I tailor them to myself. The Terracon Maniac doesn't have nearly as much side recoil as the M4, so I can get away with something like the stabilizing foregrip on it, right? When we look at the stats on that, I get vertical recoil adjusted, a little bit of horizontal, and spread, right? Remember, I said in my last video, in that prior update before that, sway is really important whenever you're taking fights in the air or moving about the battle as fast as possible. That's something you got to think about. Can you handle or adjust that sway? Spread is really important because you want to keep your bullets tight and you want them to hit your target, and that is how you improve your accuracy, right? You see that little dinky green right there when I go to the attachment, that little dinky sliver of green comes from that 5% spread that I got back on the attachment. So that is what I wanted to kind of share with you folks. I don't want to go too in depth, otherwise this video would just be an hour long. And again, that's the what and why behind all of my builds. One of the things we can't forget is the backpack. And folks, I'm going to keep it short. If you are not running doubled up limbs, like maybe double slam fist, for example, or like double trip mine or something weird like that, there's no point to use any other backpack except the soldier backpack. Especially if you're running a sniper combo. I know a lot of folks right now are still using different snipers, whether it's Pierce or Orchestral, or even our marksman users. There's a lot of folks who are out there using the Proton. And this is the Proton build I'm using, by the way. Heavy barrel suppressor, stubby foregrip, and the barrel cooler. But I think ultimately you got to figure out what suits you. And every time I'm switching and fumbling between all my weapons, I want to know that that weapon is loaded. So some food for thought. I think the last thing we probably should go over is pistols. I did leave the sidearms out because me personally, I haven't been using a lot of them. I think the only time I'm probably going to run a pistol is because I'm not running a secondary. I actually kind of treat the pistols right now as the secondary. So one of my loadouts a little bit down the row is actually a sniper pistol combination. I do think that the All-Star Tap 9 is still extremely powerful. I do think the Kelowna El Diablo and the Kiro Shinobi are extremely reliable. So take those two out. Those three are my top three that I'd say take for a spin. And then any of the 227s that are pre-made. And they all feel pretty much identical in terms of how quick they shoot and how much damage that they do. So whether you're using Slay Baller or Impact Junkie or the Flatliner, they're all going to treat you well. So if we take a look at the TTK chart, I'll bring that back up for everybody just real quick. You're going to see that those kill times, right? El Diablo number 1, All Stars number 2, Slay Baller number 3, Tap 9, Kelowna. Right, so that is just a little bit more data for everybody to kind of take that to the bank. Now, again, TTK doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use the weapon efficiently. So that's the sidearm conversation. Would I put it in my loadout? The answer is no. I don't think it's worth the $400 to $500 extra that it's got to cost you, because right now, time to complain. Right now, the TTK is too short. And I really don't know what it is with, developers in shooters right now. I understand the need to appease the community and like make the game feel easier. But Call of Duty did it. They reduced their TTK. A lot of people have been playing Apex again, and it's frustrating because they too have reduced their TTK. And the logic behind it is, well, little Timmy, who's 7 years old, or your girlfriend who decided to play games with you that night, can shoot somebody in half a second and feel a sense of being good at the video game. The problem with this, though, is it removes skill gap. There's a lot of times where you're like on the edge of a building, somebody's starting to try and shoot at you, and you slip away, and you're literally about to escape the fight, and they look over the ledge, hit you with one more bullet, and shoot you out the sky, right? And what's so ironic about this is if you down a player and then they start shooting you, it takes longer because they extended the TTK, right? It's longer. It feels better, right? It takes you a longer amount of time to kill somebody downed than it does a player that's alive. So my recommendation for the dev team is you need to flip. You need to 180 the way you have that. I would take whatever TTK you have for a down player right now and make that the standard TTK in the game. And I think whatever you have right now that's like allowing people to die in 0.9 seconds or whatever needs to be the downed opponent. Okay, and I get it. There's a lot of like noobs and stuff who are angry that they, were getting killed or thirsted, but you're playing a battle royale. And at the end of the day, it's a battle royale based on timers. So work together with your team, communicate, and get the buyback, or watch your timers. Right? Don't go bull rush into a fight you can't handle and then be upset that you got knocked out the game. When, to be honest with you, there's a lot of ways to mitigate that if you just play smart and you play as a team. I think the other problem is just too much solo queuing for a lot of you, and you don't really know the fruits you get out of rolling with a posse, if you will. So, folks, that is it in terms of my review when it comes to Off the Grid. To be completely honest with you, what are my thoughts? I think the game is in one of the best states from a weapon gameplay perspective. I do think it's in one of its worst states from a skill gap perspective. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot. I mean, if you've been playing, I'll be honest with you guys, the quality or player pool of the game has completely dwindled away, right? You don't see a lot of Merc players playing this game as much anymore. You don't see as many Flaw players playing this game much anymore, or even Dogs members or Star and so on. Like, I'm not saying they don't exist, but you're noticing that there's nothing but new faces, nothing but Xbox and PlayStation 5 players, because it seems the only reason why this game's still alive is the console community is hanging on to it for dear life. And truthfully, when Splitgate 2 dropped, it really hindered a lot of current shooters at the time in terms of a population. But, we all know it was FOMO. So now that, people have got a taste of Splitgate 2 and they're mad about hats that say make FPS great again or whatever, you're seeing players come back to Off the Grid, like me. So it's a weird love-hate relationship. I still think the game is great. I think compared to last month, it's in a much better position where I probably would try and convince a couple of my friends to try and play the game. It doesn't feel like it's a complete sweat locker like it did before. But again, the reason why that is because the skill gap is being removed from the game. I don't know why like game developers are just like afraid to make something that requires some thought process and just like technical skill or behavior. Dropping things, making the TTK as low as humanly possible so Lil Susie can kill somebody. It just sounds like a terrible idea. You already have guns that are easy to shoot. They're not hard. Anybody can use them. Little Timmy and 7-year-old Susie, they could use the guns. They don't, they're not that difficult. Knowing how to build them to suit their playstyle is where things get a little bit more difficult. And that, again, is a skill gap. And we like that kind of stuff. I'd like to see the movement get back to a better place compared to in the past where it was a lot smoother, it was a lot faster, a lot more fluid. I'm not a fan of the fact that jetpacks time out and drop you down in the air. If you're getting chased and you're getting chased by an experienced player who knows how to handle it better, you're never going to. You're basically a free kill, right? Because you can't ever outrun them. You're going to run out of jetpack, fall to the ground, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not a fan of how slow the reaction time is when people are popping leapers. I'm not a fan of every time that I try and slide that it cancels my roadrunners or vice versa, and I lose 7 to 8% just because I'm wanting to do like a roadrunner slide. That maneuver that's tech, right? And again, when you nerfed that, you nerfed something that was, in my opinion, a skill gap. So my last piece of advice for the Off the Grid dev team is stop attacking the skill gap. Stop attacking the skill gap, and I think the game has potential. I think the performance of the game has been fantastic. I haven't had any lag, latency issues. The servers have been relatively decent. The game looks a lot better than it did before. I don't have to run any special config files, which, the console kids had to find something to bitch and complain about. So no one's running any of those config files anymore because the game is actually optimized for our systems now, and you don't need it, which is a beautiful thing to say. OTG mainnet is here, which is a beautiful thing to say, and a lot of people are starting to see something happen with this market. We don't know if you're going to get rich. Not likely, to be honest with you, but at least it's there as an option, and we can start seeing if this whole NFT thing has any genuine value to it. I think the newest OTG Pro has a really cool concept. I think the skins that are being offered inside of the OTG Pro are fantastic. They're getting a lot more creative and better. They're getting more unique. So there's a lot of things that the devs are starting to do right from a quality of life perspective. But there's also some things that they're continuing to get wrong. So fingers crossed, the game continues to head in the right direction. I mean, shoot, we got permanent solos almost, right? We get them at certain times of the day. We have deathmatch now permanently. And even though they're late, surprise, 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 right? They seem to be really good at being late. Steam is right around the corner, and I think that's going to be a really big, positive bonus in terms of fixing the player base, because things are way, 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 way down right now. There's no one who can tell me, Theodore, quit lying. There's no way you can tell me this X amount of players a day is taking place. The game is certainly kind of went over the cliff, and somehow you guys managed to build a parachute before you hit the ground. There's 5-minute queue times. I played all day yesterday with some friends, and the queue times are anywhere from 3 minutes minimum. You might get into a game at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? And when the game was alive and the game was doing well, you were getting into games instantly, right? Quick in and out, leave, quick in and out, leave. And people like that kind of stuff. The game's not going well, or you see there's people in your lobby, you don't like them, get out, start up a new game. Now you don't have the incentive to do that as much, because people are going to be turned away from these strange 5-minute queue times. We're getting a lot more gun from victories. You guys might have saw several videos ago. I was doing all the, calculations and math for you, and you had to play like freaking 500 games just to afford like a M4 Enforcer Commodore. At least now you finish a game and you get like 35, 36, right? Finish a game first place with like 2-3 kills, you're getting like 35, 40, guns. And now it's starting to kind of make a lot more sense on how you can work the marketplace, how you can start saving up for things that you want to buy to take your gameplay experience to the next level. So I said this earlier, I'm gonna say it one last time. There's a lot of stuff that they're doing right, and there's still a lot of stuff that I think they need to continue to work on. In particular, stop attacking the skill gap. But the game's in a lot better spot, right? Like, I think last month you were an easy like 5.5 out of 10. Everyone and their mom was pissed at you. Even the people you simped for, you know who I'm talking about, were quitting your game, not wanting to be affiliated with you, and starting to play Splitgate. I think you're starting to see some of those players trickle back in. It's because you got off your ass and you're making decent quality of life changes. I will also say, as a final note, had you probably not put this game out so fast and abused the early access model like all these other game developers, you may have had something far more successful. If you came out with Deathmatch, you came out with solo mode, you came out on 2 platforms, Steam and Epic Games, and you managed to have your marketplace system flushed out so that way you could release shit on time. I know that's a hard one for you guys to get used to, but if you just put all that together in this super fancy package, I think you would probably have one of the top played shooters in the game right now. But the problem is you came out, you gave us like really good iterations of the game, and then later down the road, because it's early access, you gave us worse iterations of the game, and you pushed a lot of players away. You attacked the skill gap, and you pushed a lot of players away. You made the game too easy. You pushed a lot of players away. And what you're seeing now is the fruits of your labor bringing players back, because you stopped focusing on things you probably should have waited on, like balance, and put quality of life first. Is OTG great again? What's my rating for it now? 6.7. All right, which means you're slightly below average for being an early access shooter. And I do think you have the capability of getting up there to an 8 out of 10 again. I don't know if you have the ability to exceed that. Only time will tell. I was hoping to keep it short, but y'all know me, and I wanted to give you my honest thoughts, get you some loadouts, give you different perspectives on where the game is at and how players are feeling. I want to say thank you if you came by. I've been getting follows and subscribes, even though it's been a little while for me to drop some content for you. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you. You are appreciated. And until next time, folks, y'all be easy. Peace, love, and happiness.